Hey guys, another reviewer here. I was gonna do a song about Fallout 4 for you, but I didn't. Couldn't tell you why, so I guess that means there's no video for you this week. Oh well, see you later, shitlords. Oh right, you're still here.
I've never left. I've actually been here all week. Come to think of it, I don't think I even left this spot.
That's odd, I guess I just got used to your presence.
You sound just like my ex-wife.
Dead Space 2! The 2011 survival horror third-person shooter release developed by Visceral Games and published by Electronic Arts. This game starts off with a video call between our no-longer-so-silent protagonist Isaac Clarke. He says the fuck word a lot now. And his girlfriend, whom he discovered was dead in the last game, Nicole Brennan. During this conversation, it's revealed that Isaac was the one that pushed her into taking the job on the Ishimura, ultimately leading to her demise. It seems to be a memory, as Isaac is actually in a straitjacket sitting at a table across from a doctor in some sort of mental hospital. The doctor is questioning him about having nightmares, Nicole, and then the Ishimura, which leads to him mentioning the marker, which brings the apparition of Nicole back, repeating the same words she'd said a number of times from the first game, "Make us whole," before Isaac apparently blacks out. Or that was all a nightmare too, I really don't fucking know. There's no big difference between what just happened and what's about to happen to really let you differentiate reality from a goddamn bad dream. Anyway, you come around again as a man named Franco attempts to free you, before an infector transforms him into a necromorph in a terrifying display directly in front of you. This is when you're contacted by Dana, who instructs you to run. You don't have use of your hands, as Franco was killed before he was able to remove the straitjacket, so running is really all you can do. There's an attack you can't avoid at the door of the room to establish that QuickTime events are back, as well as set up a confrontation with the Doctor from the first scene of the game. At first he holds a scalpel to your neck, but then he cuts you free of your straitjacket, notices your rig is showing red, and advises you to grab a med pack and a flashlight from a locker, then he kills himself. The rig is back, and nothing has really changed except there aren't air cans anymore. The Resource Integration Gear, or RIG, displays your health. When it's blue, you're above 75% health, green when you're above 50%, yellow for below 50%, and red for below 25%. It also acts as your communicator. A display of who you're speaking to is projected in front of you from your rig. The display is also used to show you what items you're able to pick up in front of you. Next to the health indicator on your rig is a display that shows you how many stasis charges you have. This time there are lines separating your charges so you actually know how many you have available. When you're outside of the station, or in an area without air, a display shows you how much oxygen you have remaining. I'm still not sure how Isaac is supposed to be aware of this vital information for his survival. Anyway, the breadcrumb trail is still there, but now it not only points you to your objective, but also to nearby stores, benches, and save points. Don't let this handy feature fool you. These utilities seem to be more spread out than they were in the last game. Though the breadcrumb trail often tells you they're ahead, you're almost always better off backtracking to previous areas you've already cleared, because you may have a lot to fight through to get to the next one. The game is still pretty lenient with the drops, and still has the schematic system, so you're still going to want to clear out your inventory as much as possible, but we'll get into that later. As you make your way out of the hospital, you're forced to improvise and take modules from various medical machines. The first item you come across is the Kinesis module. The game forces you to become familiar with its new feature of being capable of picking up poles and firing them at necromorphs, as it's your only means of defending yourself. You just pin their asses to the walls, it's pretty awesome. It still allows you to move heavy objects and pull items to you, but now it has an added combat ability of ripping limbs off of necromorphs and allowing you to fire them back. Another item you stumble across is a plasma cutter barrel attached to a surgical machine with a man strapped underneath it. You quickly attach the plasma cutter to your flashlight, effectively recreating your best friend in the first game as you watch the man die. There are a number of other weapons you can acquire once you find the store and start collecting schematics. The Force Gun, Line Gun, Pulse Rifle, Ripper, Flamethrower, and Contact Beam all make a return, albeit with different alt-fire this time around. The Force Gun's alt-fire is now a piercing concentrated blast, and the Pulse Rifle gets a grenade launcher alt-fire. Oh well, you don't run into as many Guardians, not that one, this time around. There are some new weapons that you can make use of, like the Javelin Gun, the Detonator, the Rivet Gun, and the Seeker Rifle. The Javelin Gun is just what it says on the tin. It fires metal rods you can use to impale necromorphs. The Detonator sets down mines that explode on contact. The Rivet Gun is just a precise rapid-fire weapon, and the Seeker Rifle is kind of like a sniper rifle. The Seeker Rifle is the most useless weapon in the game, and I say that after trying to use the Contact Beam in the last game. The alt-fire just zooms in the screen, and apparently it does more damage and is more precise, but it's really awkward with no scope. It just obstructs what's going on around you, even more so than usual, and the only thing the necromorphs do the second they appear is charge you, so you'll never have a good opportunity to use this weapon. Trust me, I looked. You also find schematics for suits that increase your armor, inventory space, and some even give you bonuses like discounts at stores, increased damage, or decreased stasis recharge time. As you find schematics, you want to get them to the store as soon as possible or they'll clog up your limited inventory, as you likely also have ammo, med packs, and stasis packs. You also find power nodes that fortunately don't take up inventory space, but are very important because they allow you to go to a bench to upgrade your weapons for damage, reload speed, ammo capacity, and other weapon-specific traits, your rig for health, air capacity, and kinesis impalement damage, and your stasis module for stasis duration, recharge speed, and stasis energy capacity. Power nodes can also be used to unlock special doors to rooms filled with useful items. It's normally a good idea to keep a power node on hand at all times to get into these rooms. The upgrade system hasn't changed at all, and honestly, I don't see why it would. Why fix what isn't broken? As you continue to find your way out, you run into a strange man who calls himself Patient 5 as a barricade closes between you. This is Nolan Strauss. He's endured the same treatment you have, and it's revealed that he murdered his family due to the marker's influence. He's one of the people, while not directly being with you, is traveling through the station to reach a common goal. Kind of. You find another piece of medical equipment that is obviously housing a stasis module. The console to get it introduces you to a hacking mechanic that's new to the series, where you have to rotate your mouse to find weak points in the system. Doing this 3 times allows you to shut off the stasis field and take the stasis module, but it also enables a necromorph to perform a one-hit kill if you don't immediately use your newfound skill on him to slow him down and kill him. You also have to use it to stop a door from closing that's keeping you from progressing, demonstrating all of the uses of this device. There are still conveniently placed recharge stations and stasis packs for your consumption as well. You suffer several more violent hallucinations of the same deformed Nicole we saw in the opening scene, before suiting up at a store and facing a new enemy called a tripod that we'll talk about later. You find out that you've been here for 3 years, here being Titan Station on a moon of Saturn, affectionately known as the Sprawl. You are found floating in space by Director Tideman, the man who's in charge of this place. You're then informed that your brain was imprinted by a self-replicating signal by the marker you interacted with in the last game that has been causing these hallucinations of Nicole and slowly killing you. You've been put on memory-suppressing drugs to try and keep it in check, but Dana informs you that if you get to her, she'll be able to cure you. As you continue, you find out that Tideman had initiated an evacuation, likely due to the necromorph infestation, and realize that a gunship is looking for you. You end up hacking a tram that is coming apart, and this is where you get to play with the jet boots. Instead of having jumping segments for the zero-gravity environments, you now have rocket-powered boots that allow you to have more control when you're floating around. It's a great improvement, and I really can't see any way that they would be able to take these zero-G rocket boot segments and make them unfun or tedious in future games in the series. Now about that necromorph infestation. Slashers and leapers are still very common, despite the leaper becoming absolute bullshit, and able to just attack you without warning constantly. And the enhanced leapers are stupid fast. But that's not the most annoying common enemy you'll face. There's now a female variant to the slasher called the Spitter. They charge at you until they're close enough, which isn't actually close at all as they have quite a long range, and spit a glob of bile at you. This will cause you to take damage and significantly slow you down. It is so goddamn annoying. There are Pukers that do the same thing, but then follow it up with an incredibly strong melee attack. Pukers are much slower, though. Speaking of annoying, there are these living landmine things called cysts. They seem to just be explosive growths made of the corruption. Just shoot them so they release their load and immediately wither away. Okay, so that came out weirder than I meant it to. Anyway, the corruption is the organic, fleshy necromorph shit that you can find on some of the walls. The corruption isn't as prevalent this time around just because of the sheer size of the sprawl. It would take an awful lot of dead flesh to cover everything, and presumably a lot of the people actually made it out. Due to this lack of corruption, there aren't many Guardians in this game. Guardians are created when a human is stuck in the corruption. It causes them to have tentacles that come out of their torso that cling to the wall. Destroying the tentacles kills it. It shoots pods out of its torso cavity that sprout a tentacle that shoots projectiles at you. Okay, since there aren't as many Guardians, they're out of the running for most annoying enemy, but I haven't gotten into the Stalkers yet. These sons of bitches are really, really annoying, and if you aren't incredibly accurate with your stasis beam, or at least have a few extra stasis packs on you, these fucking things will wipe the floor with you. Yeah, you'll be able to get lucky every now and again, but even if you manage to take out a limb, or if you don't kill them, or slow them down before they get to you, they will hit you. And there's always at least half a dozen of these fuckers in the room when you find them. If you find yourself in a large storage room filled with boxes, be prepared. It's going to be filled with these pieces of ass trash, and they fucking hurt. They're probably the only reason the stasis canisters are in the game. Actually, that's another dead giveaway shit's going to be going down, is if stasis canisters are even around. You can grab these things with your kinesis beam and shoot them at enemies, or just shoot them while enemies are close to them, but they're kind of wonky sometimes and don't always seem to work. And to remind you that this is a horror game, we need to incorporate creepy babies in some way. Can we get some creepy babies in here? Lurkers, with their creepy baby heads and missile-flinging tentacles, have competition now in Crawlers and the Pack. Crawlers are basically moving explosive sacks, much like the arm of an exploder, with baby heads that are twisted so that they're facing backwards. However, instead of shambling towards you and slamming their explosive sack on you, and I just realized I can tick the exploder off the list now, they swarm you in groups, and once they get in range, they explode, damaging and knocking you over. You can either shoot them from a safe distance to blow them up and the enemies around them, or use the force gun on them so that you have several explosives lying around for later. The Pack are very frail child necromorphs and are always in large groups. They really just swarm you and attempt to tear you apart that way. It's a huge waste of ammo to try to take them out individually, so again, I found the force gun is perfect for this job. You just blast them, then fire again to make items fly out of them. I love finding groups of the Pack because they're just so easy to deal with and are very profitable. I forgot to mention this, and now is as good a time as any, but just killing an enemy isn't enough anymore. You either have to shoot them again or stomp on them to get their item drops to come out. And now every enemy has an item drop, you just have to beat it out of them. You also run into pregnants that resemble slashers, but their bodies are composed of huge sacs. You want to be careful how you kill them, as any body shots may puncture their sacs and release swarmers, which are incredibly annoying little fuckers that if you don't get rid of enough of them in a group before they descend upon you, they insta-kill you. Infectors are treated differently this time around, where instead of creating enhanced slashers, they create normal slashers, while enhanced infectors create enhanced slashers. Well, thank your lucky stars for that, being you're introduced to the necromorphs being back by a fresh slasher being made in front of you. If Franco became an enhanced slasher, that probably would have ended the game right there, but that actually brings up a good question. Where do enhanced infectors come from? You only face 2 of them in the whole game, so I guess it's not a big deal. Speaking of enemies you only run into twice in this game, let's talk about the Dividers. Dividers are made up of various body parts that, when dismembered from the creature, begin to attack you on their own with the purpose of the head strangling you to death and stealing your body. Twitchers make a comeback as well. They resemble slashers, but are much faster, do more damage, and move more erratically. Stasis when dealing with these guys is a must. While brutes are still running around, there's a new mini-boss that's a really big pain in the ass, and that would be the Nest. Nests are exclusively in zero-G environments and fire mines at you. You have to take out their 3 yellow pods to kill them, and they always drop valuable semiconductors that you can sell for cash at stores. Brutes are huge ape-like creatures with heavily armored arms that they use to ram you with. You defeat them by severing them at their shoulders. Brutes aren't as common anymore, though, as they're kind of replaced by a new enemy called a tripod. Tripods are large beasts with 3 legs, 2 of which where their arms should be, and 1 off their torso. It attacks by swinging its arms around, flailing around its tongue, or lunging at you from a distance. One has a baby attached to it, and apparently that one's a female, while the other ones you fight are male. Oddly enough, you encounter these necromorphs several times to several different capacities, even finding yourself traipsing around in their nest. There's a couple of mini-bosses, but we'll talk about them when we get to them, being they're mostly inconsequential and you don't even really fight them. Back to the plot. It turns out Dana is leading you into a church of Unitology, and once you get to her, she has 2 guards seize you and reveals that you built the marker on Titan Station, causing the necromorph infestation, and because she's a Unitologist, instead of curing you, intends to use you to make more markers. The gunship that has been hunting you appears and shoots at you, killing Dana and her 2 guards, but you manage to escape by ripping open a vent and falling in. This is where you confront the Tormentor. The name implies you fight him several times throughout the game, but no, as soon as you encounter him, he grabs you and starts slamming your ass around until you get an opportunity to shoot off his arm. Then you gotta run like hell into the next room, so the gunship outside can shoot the window out, sending you and it into space, so you can shoot an explosive canister, blowing it up, never to be seen again. God damn, that was cool. You find out via various logs throughout the game that the Unitologists are actually responsible for the outbreak of the necromorph infection on Titan Station. You learn information on past events from text, audio, and video logs recorded before and during the necromorph infestation that fill you in on what led to the current situation. And that sets the main plot into motion. Destroy the marker and get off Titan Station with Stross in tow. You eventually find another companion by the name of Ellie Langford. She's reluctant to trust you at first, but ends up accompanying Stross and assisting in destroying the marker and getting off the sprawl, as Tideman keeps actively trying to hinder your progress. At one point, you go through an area that's protected by a creepy, ever-watchful AI that does everything it can to kill you. The guy authorized to be in the area is dead, and you use his corpse to get access into it. So it's just trying to do what it's coded to do, but it just feels so sinister. It's just standing there, watching, waiting for your next move. Oh, fuck, man. This game is so cool. I wonder what it'll do next. You get to go on a trip down memory lane on the Ishimura. At first, everything is quiet and sterile. The marker is no longer influencing it, and it's mostly sealed due to being sanitized, but it's all very much the same. This part is amazing because if the players also play Dead Space, they're recreating the atmosphere themselves from the familiarity of the first game, expecting things to happen where they don't. Instead of the character on screen just saying things are strangely familiar, the player actually feels it. The game plays on that a little by having harmless little jump scares reminiscent of the first game, as far as putting you in the decontamination chamber, and there you stand, locked in, expecting to get an ambush, and nothing. But of course, after you've repaired the centrifuge and come back through, the necromorphs have swarmed the ship, so you get attacked the second time you're locked in. But I guess that just means status quo has been achieved. This is kind of the turning point for the game, where it goes from being very good and very interesting to kind of boring and repetitive. While you're on the tram from engineering on your way to the captain's nest to turn on the Ishimura's gravity tethers, the tram informs you there's an obstruction in the tracks, so it stops at the medbay. I bring this up because the atmosphere here is amazing. It's something we've seen in the last game, but made new by a blacklight effect. It's a very familiar place, but all the gore on the walls and floor is glowing light blue. You even get to run through the areas where you confronted the Hunter with a chilling recreation of the infamous Nicole video from the last game. The game still has a great atmosphere, and it really feels like something terrible has happened everywhere you go. And even though you are running alongside Ellie and Stross, you physically interact with them so little that you still feel isolated. Unfortunately, this is where the gameplay goes from interesting and puzzle-oriented to throwing you into endless arena-style battles where the doors are constantly locked at your heels until you kill everything in the room. I already started getting pissed off long before this point when backtracking to stores, benches, and save points were hindered by doors just locking behind your heels for no real reason, causing you to press on so that you can empty your full inventory or upgrade your weapons with the piles of power nodes that you've collected. Stross's deteriorating sanity leads to conflict as he frequently becomes aggressive towards Ellie, mumbling semi-incoherently about the steps. Once you escape the Ishimura, Ellie contacts you as you watch Stross attempting to remove one of her eyes with a screwdriver. Upon successfully doing so, he runs off on his own, frequently having run-ins with Isaac, still holding the screwdriver, that has Ellie's eyeball skewered onto it. At one point, Strauss attacks Isaac in an attempt to do the same to his eye, which ultimately leads to Isaac driving the screwdriver into Strauss's head, killing him. You find an audio log on him that explains what's been hinted at the entire game, that the marker appears to Strauss as his dead wife and son. Am I the only one that feels like the reveal and the sadness you're supposed to feel over Strauss's fate is completely overshadowed by the fact that Isaac keeps taking his helmet off? Keep it on, asshole! You know Strauss is after you and he's really into eyes these days! Because Isaac can't seem to get a break, you're attacked by Nicole, who questions Isaac on whether he realizes what she is, whether it's her or a manifestation of his guilt for sending her to her death. He admits that she was his everything, and letting go of the manifestation means letting go of Nicole. She then reverts to her normal self and tells him now that he's accepted what he's done, he can finish this. Okay, so listen, we're at that point where a lot of shit happens, and not a lot of it really adds up. But it's cool, so we're gonna go with it. You come across Ellie in a giant drill you have to repair in a subterranean level of the Sprawl. Once you successfully do so, you end up riding on top of it, fighting off a load of necromorphs as it cuts through the corruption. Eventually it ends up under the government sector where the marker is being stored, so of course, Ellie presses forward despite you being on top of the thing, and flings your ass gracefully into EarthGov. Ellie discovers a gunship, which you promptly launch her off on, before Nicole appears again, pleading for Isaac to make us whole. Immediately after, Tiedemann contacts you telling you he has 200 armed soldiers, so even if you get in, you won't get out. They spot you and have you in their sights, so you just slip into a bathroom and they all of a sudden have no idea where you went. This bathroom also just so happens to have a janitor's closet, that just so happens to have a maintenance shaft, that just so happens to lead directly to where the power source for the lobby where the soldiers were waiting for you is. You remove the power source, which allows the necromorphs in to take them all out. Unfortunately, this also gives them access to the marker, which really annoys Tiedemann. You wander around aimlessly until Nicole appears again and points out where to go. Along your mysterious path, you find a number of audio logs that follow a researcher trying to crack the signals coming from the marker. You find out that he begins to black out and wake up having made perfect, albeit smaller, replicas of the marker out of household objects. He realizes that they have no idea how to replicate the marker themselves. The marker is taking control of people and forcing them to make more. You then discover the marker you made yourself, surrounded by necromorphs. Nicole informs you that something called convergence is at hand. Tiedemann contacts you again, berating you for letting so many necromorphs in. Once again, Nicole begs you to make us whole. To be honest, I actually still don't know what that even means. You find a room with a machine that was described by Strauss when he was mumbling about the steps. Isaac reveals that it activates the part of his brain where the marker codes are stored. Nicole alludes that if Isaac goes into the machine and goes through with it, him working with her will stop the marker. Even though she is the marker? I mean, listen, I get it. Isaac's being mindfuck silly right now. But first she comes to him as alive after she's died, until he comes to terms with the fact that she's actually dead. Then she appears to him as a horrific walking corpse that constantly terrorizes him, until he comes to terms with the guilt that he's been facing because he's the one that pushed her to work on the Ishimura. Now she's appearing again as just normal Nicole, albeit with better graphic design, but it just seems that every time we leave this guy alone, shit just goes sideways. Anyway, he climbs in, his head gets clamped in place, and you control a needle that is intended to go straight into Isaac's eye. Don't screw this up, by the way. This one wins the most horrific death in the game. Hell, even doing this successfully is fucked up. Upon exiting the machine, Nicole appears enshrouded in light, telling you to meet her at the marker. You would think at this point that the necromorphs would straight up stop attacking you so you can make your way to the marker, but then the Ubermorph appears. The Ubermorph is a necromorph that has the incredibly frightening ability of regenerating its limbs after they're severed, and absolutely does not die. This thing literally chases you to the last room of the game, and is apparently something that just happens now, even though it's supposedly man-made in the last game. Actually, I see no reason to complain. Fuck Mercer, he doesn't need to get credit for this. You approach the marker and Tiedemann is there, half-charred, wielding a javelin gun. You manage to disarm him and kill him before Nicole reveals her intention for you to die. She enters your mind where she tells you your body needs to be absorbed to prevent you from destroying the marker and allowing it to be reborn. You have to do a bunch of damage to Nicole without her reaching you, or allowing yourself to get overwhelmed by the shadows of the pack attacking you, so that the marker opens up behind Nicole, which allows you to attack its heart directly. If Nicole reaches you, well, this happens. After you manage to destroy the marker, using the motherfucking contact beam, baby! And resign yourself to dying on the crumbling Titan station. Ellie contacts you and informs you that she's coming to get you. Once you successfully reach the gunship, Isaac gets a familiar feeling, but looks over to see Ellie there next to him. There's an odd post-credit audio conversation that details that Titan Station was completely destroyed and the marker couldn't be recovered. This is when it's revealed that there are more markers under control of this mysterious overseer that seem to be over Tideman's head. This game is definitely an improvement over the original. Obviously it has better graphics, but it also has more variety in its locations, being it takes place in a city rather than a single ship. The inventory management and ammo juggling are still there, but they improve the anti-gravity segments by giving you the ability to freely roam around them, and they really nailed the atmosphere. There are still QuickTime events, but it's still just mashing the E key while a necromorph is in your personal space. The logs and backstory you're fed throughout the game give the sprawl life as well. This game is definitely the better one of the first two, but it still had the same issues that really bothered me. It still forgoes the puzzle solving for endless, mindless combat in enclosed areas for the latter half of the game, and being it still has the same tank controls, this takes a little time and practice to get used to. The Leapers being able to come in out of nowhere and just get a hit on you is irritating as fuck too. Also, I just can't get over the fact that Isaac slips into the restroom in front of a dozen soldiers and no one has any idea where he went. Actually, that gives me an idea.